Welcome to Wisdom for Life, where we sift through philosophy to find practical advice that you can use in your everyday life. Hi, I'm Dan Hayes. I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Greg Sadler. Today, we're talking about
practical and ethical concerns about AI text generators. And that's quite a mouthful, and maybe a few people might be wondering what exactly we're talking about, so we're going to have to break that down right off the bat. I think, you'd have to be living under a rock not to have heard about AI by this point, but what's an AI text generator, and how is it different than some of the other things that we've talked about in the past? We did an episode specifically about AI art generators and ethical concerns with that, and I think we've talked about AI in some of our other episodes, but not as thematically or as focused as we're going to do in this one. So it is a really important topic. AI is not going away unless, I guess, the internet and computers go away, right? The cat is out of the bag, as they say, or the genie's out of the bottle. So what are AI text generators? I think we need kind of a run through of what that actually means. So do you want to say something about that, Dan?
Yeah. So these are models, and a model is a term that we use within computer science, especially with neural networks. That is a function approximator, and so you can with these create any function. So like a function is like a plus or x plus b is equal to c, like your standard line function. That is a function, but any problem in computer science can be determined as a function, and neural networks are universal function approximators. And so a lot of functions
You're going to have to explain what that is for people, I think.
Yeah. So universal means that it has the ability to the ability to work for every single function, but you can get it to be like, hey, you want a true false, like a not gate or an and gate, some like really, really basic things in computer science, or like something like write me Dr. Seuss book. What's give me the dog in the hat, or green peas and
spam.
Exactly. Perfect. And so because everything can be defined as a function, this process of neural networks can allow you to approximate any function as long as you have enough inputs and outputs for it. What we're doing here with a text-based model is creating something that has the ability to very least approximate talking to a person or asking for it to produce text in a specific way that you would want it.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are familiar with this more on the user side rather than the techie side, how things actually work and all the guts. So the interfaces that people have, ChatGPT is probably the most famous one out there right now, right? But there's others that are getting some traction, sometimes well, sometimes poorly. They rolled out Grok on Twitter, and I can tell you that on Twitter it was not well received by many users, at least the ones that I could see. But, Microsoft has had Bing for quite a while, which didn't seem to be great, but now is getting better. Google has had a couple, Bard. Now they've got this Gemini thing. And, how many do you think there are out there? Do we have a handle on this?
Are we talking about like products? There's dozens of products.
Yeah.
If you're talking about like how many of these are out in the world, unknowable, because a lot of these things, especially the text generators, people take them and remix them and create their own, and they're running them locally on their own computers. And so this is a very, very widespread technology. It might be like for only those tech elite that are going to be able to run them on their own home computers, you got to have a large enough graphics card or a fast enough graphics card with like at least 12 gigs of RAM to run most of these models. Yeah, they're potentially hundreds of thousands running currently.
Interesting. But most people are going to be using one of these big platforms because it's easier for them. What other kind of text generators are there out there that people might need to know about?
Well, you grabbed a lot of the big ones, especially, you got your 20,000 pound gorilla, which is ChatGPT. They've got a number of different versions of this. They get progressively better and larger. They really seem to be the pinnacle. And then, it's Gemini and Claude and Grok. Stability AI has a number of different ones going out there, but there's also text generating programs that do lots of specific things, as well as really code generators. And so like Microsoft is like trying to make everything into its Copilot. They Copilot eventually first came from applying AI to their they bought GitHub, which is a repository for open source projects and closed source. It's a way for teams of developers to work together on a single shared code base. But since they own the whole platform, they could just like go and mine that for inputs and outputs on how to build code. And now they built this whole thing called Copilot. It allows programmers to quickly both analyze and then produce new code. And then they use that same name to like, now they're sticking it into all of their other name. Like they got rid of Bing. And so now it's going to be Microsoft Copilot, everything.
Oh, is it? Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like this is one of the themes of this. As time goes on, you have the new and improved version, but there's like a rollout of, no, it's not the new and improved version of this thing, which we don't like anymore. It's this new thing over here. And I suppose
a lot of that's marketing.
Yeah, I was going to say we could probably find analogies to that with many other products.
Yeah. Otherwise, as you were talking about, like there's stuff for fixing your language, whatever you're writing. Hey, give me feedback on like, is it this too forward? Is this too demure? I want this to be like really punchy for just your regular texts. I'd say, and then there's also stuff for making sure your grammar's correct. For what are some others? What do you got?
Well, there's some niche apps as well. It looks like there's AI text generators that focus on a particular, let's call it sector of the economy. Mm-hmm. So there's this sapling that's aimed at sales and support teams. You've got WordTune that does the sort of stuff that you were talking about with fixing grammatical errors and suggesting things. I would say Grammarly is like that. I think most people are probably more familiar with that, if only because their ads are everywhere.
Everywhere. I think they started off as not a AI company, but I think they've, like, as everyone in the industry has like, these are powerful tools that we can utilize. But there's issues with these as well.
Yeah.
Like there was a story about a car salesman or car sales dealership that was using a text chatbot to help their customers and got it to say like, I will sell you this car for $1 and this is a legally binding offer.
I saw some other stories along similar lines where there's a question that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Who's liable for claims that are made by AI text generators? Because they're not conscious, so they don't really know what they're saying or the import of it. And you could probably design some fail-safes into it, but so far people don't seem to be doing that. They just get the bot up and running, and then it says things that commit them to all sorts of problems. I thought you were going to go a different direction, which is something that people bring up, like the bot turned racist or sexist or something like that. But this is a more interesting one, I think. Can bots make commitments for their owners or users?
Eventually, maybe. Right now, I would say probably not, but like they are definitely not prime time enough for you to make legally binding contracts.
There was another similar concern raised, and it was because pharmacies, if I remember correctly, were using AI bots for answering the kind of routine questions that people will have on websites. And they were giving information that would be technically correct in the majority of cases, but in the case of the person working with the chatbot, they were getting information that could have potentially killed them if they acted upon it. And so this is a big concern as well,
Right.
But
as well as another niche is that they're doing a lot with trying to use them for customer service. And so that, you've had a lot of like kind of poor robots running like at least level 1 audio customer service. Press 1 for this, or say 1. And so they're doing a lot of like what was kind of like basic Amazon Alexa type things, where it's like it's got pattern recognition, but it has no ability to like easily have a conversation or whatnot. They're now implementing that as kind of like a more sophisticated version of that. There's one company, I think that they laid off like 700 people that were their front end customer service. But
it's interesting, and I don't want to go too deep into the weeds about this because I want to get into like talking about some more specific areas. But Cory Doctorow had a piece recently where he was talking about AI hype, and he noted that there's a lot of decisions that are being made, and what he calls AI hype can go negative or positive. And so it's people who are unrealistically optimistic about what an AI bot can do on the positive side, and then it's like everything from this is sucking our souls out to this is going to destroy things, it's going to turn into the Matrix. All that is the negative hype. And he said that with, when you look at quite a few of these companies, they will think, okay, cost savings, we can create a bunch of essentially, robots, which then can handle the tasks that all of these people did. We don't have to pay them, money. We don't have to like have insurance for them. Although actually, maybe, going back to the responsibility, maybe you're going to have insurance not to keep the AI healthy, but just in case the AI does something that
liability.
It's not exactly.
Yeah.
And he noted that what ends up happening a lot of the time is the AI bots don't perform up to the standards that they want them to. And then you need to hire other humans to oversee what the AI bots do and unscrew up the screw-ups that they make. And you don't actually get over time cost savings. But if you're only looking at it in a, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 sort of way in stock reports, it looks really great to fire a bunch of people, right? But
of course,
yeah,
as usually the largest line item in anyone's expenditures.
Personnel, yeah.
And I can totally see this eventually getting to another Cory Doctorow term, which is also a proper economics term, shitification, which is basically once a company has locked in its user base and its supplier base, and it acts as like the in-between person to then basically cut as many costs as possible. And because it's got a locked in user and supplier base, no one can like move away from it.
Yeah.
And so they
and it results in a much worse user experience over time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's maximizing for shareholder returns, and you're seeing this in a number of places. Probably one of the biggest things is Amazon right now. They started charging for commercial-free TV. If you had that beforehand, it was free until just recently.
Interesting. Yeah, well, some of the other streaming services are doing similar things. But let's shift topic a little bit. So, when people think about the concerns with AI text generation, I think one of the biggest ones that gets attention is in the academic area. And this is easy to relate to because if you know college students, you know that many of them this is not a new thing, don't always do their own work. They may have somebody write their paper for them, or they might try to, cheat in certain ways. We call this academic dishonesty. So it's not a radically new thing, but
should I spend 4 hours writing this paper,
Yeah.
or should I go to the party?
Exactly. Yeah, it's those sort of trade-offs that create these dilemmas. And, so teaching at MyEd, we had a meeting about this, and it was very interesting to see the wide range of perspectives that the instructors had, because, ChatGPT had suddenly come on the scene and students were using it or reportedly using it. I don't think it's actually that widespread at MyEd, but in some schools it's pretty widespread. And, you look at what ChatGPT 3 could generate, it all sounded kind of the same stuff. It's at a higher level than a lot of student writing, but it doesn't sound quite right, and it would get things wrong. And the teachers were mostly concerned about, how do we put an end to this? And I don't think you can. I mean, I think the students are going to use it. And
It's
so
Pandora's box.
Yeah, you better figure out how you're going to address it. And one of the conversations that we ended up having was, okay, what should our AI policy be? And eventually what they decided is everybody should have their own AI policy, but you have to have one so that the students have clarity. A lot of instructors were saying this is plagiarism. And I said, well, technically it's not plagiarism, because to plagiarize, you have to take somebody else's work, another human being's work, and present it as your own without attribution. So you're effectively stealing and taking credit for somebody else's thoughts. And what what a large language model AI generator is doing, you could argue that it's a sort of like a plagiarism in a composite way. But I think that's a tough argument to make. So the AI itself,
because that's like, if I'm writing something, I'm going to composite all the ideas and things I read. Anyway, it's like,
well, and it's very
similar to the...
It's only taking a little bit from here and a little bit from here. It's not like taking whole lines, which is what we see plagiarists doing. Or whole pages, right?
Right. And so, this is similar to what we were talking about on our last show, where it's...
Oh, right.
There's something...
Right.
There's an issue here.
Yeah.
And we have certain ideas we want to kind of shove this issue into, and it's not quite the right thing. It's shoving a round peg into a square hole, and I think we have a more nuanced conversation to have.
That's right, yeah. So it's not plagiarism, because in a certain way it can't definitionally fit into it, but it clearly is dishonesty to take something that this tool generated and say, this is my own stuff. So it falls under some kind of, violation. And so it makes us think about, well, what's the problem we actually have with it? And, we can think about, what's the point of making students write things? I mean, some of it, quite frankly, is make work. And if your assignments are just make work, you are just begging for these students to cheat. And they were doing that before anyway. But, if a student isn't doing their own writing and thinking and going through an editorial process that involves rewriting and researching, they're not really learning. And that's what we ideally want them to be doing. That's what secondary education is supposed to be providing them with, is learning opportunities. And I also think that you could say it's a legitimate worry that the students would get too dependent on a form of technology. If the AI is going to do a lot of the writing and thinking for them, then they don't learn how to critically use it and assess it. And, as you were mentioning, nuance, right? So you could do a ChatGPT or whatever session, and you could say, hey, I got to write a paper on, we'll take art, right? I got to write a paper on impressionistic art and why it's important. Okay, you could ask ChatGPT that and get some prompts, and you could get some decent stuff to work with. But you would still need to think about it and cobble things together in the way that we did as students in order for you to learn anything in the process. The other thing that came up, and I actually put this into my own policy, because there is this tendency for AI results to include not just false information, but let's call it imaginary information, right? It's just, they call it hallucination. And I guess that's not a bad metaphor for it, because what are you doing when you're hallucinating? You're seeing stuff that isn't there. So, if you ask the AI to write something for you, you better make sure that everything that it writes is actually true. And I think a lot of students aren't doing that. They're just, but it's the same thing as if they've gone to websites. Exactly. Yeah. So it's not radically new. And it seems like there's quite a few academics who want to approach this mainly from a policing mentality. We got to make sure these students can't cheat somehow. And we have an opportunity here instead to say, hey, you're going to use these tools just as you would use other tools. Now I'm older than you. I don't know if you had this when you were young. Calculators were relatively new, and they didn't want us to use calculators in math classes until we got to high school. And the reason they didn't want us to do it is because we had to learn how to do these things in our head, or on paper. And, we weren't going to develop as human beings if we were too dependent on this technology. And so, they would forbid us from using it. And there'd always be some kid with a calculator under the table who wasn't particularly good at math. Right?
And the argument was, what? You're never going to have a calculator in your pocket at all times.
That's right. Yeah. True. Yeah. Which we do. It's an app, You got to do a little bit of digging around sometimes to find your calculator app. But I think we should instead be helping the student. We should encourage them to use AI and say, okay, now why did your AI not give you a good essay? If we can get them to actually think about how to improve the results that are coming out from the AI, or how would you incorporate that, that's higher order learning. And that probably will be useful for them down the line,
So this reminds me of the lawyer who recently got in trouble because he was using ChatGPT or something. Yeah. And he said he was making a legal brief, and he was including previous case law. But he just asked ChatGPT for the case law. It provided it a number of different cases. The cases aren't real. They were, as we said, hallucinations. Yeah. And so we got lots of flack for it. But this is a really good teachable moment exactly for what you were saying, because people are going to be using these. These are tools that can be potentially extremely time-saving in certain aspects, but the things that are most important are the actual facts in the matter. And if you're not going to double check that the things that these things are outputting are actually representative, then you're going to have a really bad time, and you're going to get a lot of flack and potentially have, I don't know if you could get disbarred for this, but definitely you're going to have a problem with the bar.
Yeah, you could say that there are situations. So you're writing a research paper, you get some stuff wrong in it, you're going to lose some points because your instructor will say, yeah, this isn't true information. Okay, you lost some points. And you feel bad about that, and it could affect your grade, but there's no heart in a box that isn't going to get to somebody. But if somebody gets something wrong in terms of, the law, well, that can affect all sorts of massively important things. Or medicine would be a prime case as well, right? We don't want false information getting filtered in. There could literally be a heart in the box that doesn't get where it's supposed to get. It wouldn't be for medical reasons, but logistical reasons. But, that's pretty important.
Another place, within engineering, there's professional engineers, which is an extra set of tests that for your specific discipline, you're supposed to show a competency in which you can then become liable. You have to have someone that is a professional engineer to sign off on certain things that are being designed, because these things that are being designed are like cars or bridges or buildings that will potentially, if done incorrectly, maim or kill people. Yeah. And so these are another thing. So these are life and death things. These are a higher level of scrutiny that we have to hit. And if you're going to be using these types of tools, you better be checking those things very, very hard.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't think it corresponds exactly to the idea of fiduciary duties, but maybe there's an analogy there. And maybe this is something that would have to be woven into codes of professional ethics if people are, I can't imagine they're not going to be using AI text generators down the line, you know? Mm-hmm. I've got a question for you. I mean, one of the other topics we were going to talk about was other concerns that people have for writing work that's generated by AI for commercial or professional stuff. But you mentioned coding. Are there concerns out there in the coding community about, say, reckless or, poorly thought out uses of AI text generation of code and what that could end up doing?
Oh, yeah, because there's, I forget the tool, but there's the tool that's an agent, which you can thus ask it to start a number of different processes and link them together, of which could be code.
Okay.
And so the issue would be then, you have things that would like shoot out, 1,000 phishing attacks per second, and then it monitors all of those. And then right when any phishing attack is eventually hit, you have then, say, like code to automatically try to log in and compromise those credentials, like faster than any individual human could like react to, like, oh shoot, I clicked the wrong link or whatever.
Yeah.
And the worry, especially on places like Less Wrong, is that these tools in the wrong hands can potentially be incredibly dangerous for the systems that we've already built in this world. And because they are so distributed, that the chances of a bad actor using it and resulting in really bad outcomes is significantly higher than other technologies, like on the worries about like nuclear proliferation.
Yeah.
That it's very difficult to build and maintain a nuclear reactor and or a bomb. And the outcomes in the wrong places could be similar but different.
I was just thinking, we have these legacy computer languages that for years and years and years, there haven't been enough younger people studying them. And so
COBOL and Fortran and
Pascal, yeah. And these are very important for the banking industry. The military uses some of these things. Now, I suppose you could really only use an AI text generator to write new code. Or, let me ask you this. Could you actually take a bunch of old code and say, go through it and find any potential bugs? Okay, so
absolutely.
So
that's one of the biggest and actually incredibly most useful things is like both finding issues as well as explaining code. So you got like a brand new to you database of code, right?
Okay.
And so you got to like go through it and try to understand it well enough. This you can ask it just, okay, what is this file? What is it? How does it hook up into everything to explain this code? But yeah, absolutely. You could say, hey, you know a whole bunch of exploits. Search this code for all the exploits.
Okay. So again, we're back at the hacker thing. But I was wondering, do you think that there's a greater chance, as we don't have enough people who actually want to study Fortran, that AI bots will be delegated to those sort of maintenance tasks? Or
potentially, I don't know. I know that there's the banking industry actually pays for people and whole colleges to specifically have programs in order to make sure that there are enough people to do those.
Rightly so, yeah. Because without that, we're all screwed,
Yeah, I can't remember. One of the UW schools, I don't know if it's like Eau Claire or Stevens Point, has a Fortran like pipeline, because there's a number of companies like, just give us those Fortran programmers.
Yeah. I'm old enough because I was a math major, so I had a lot of, classes with computer science majors when I was in college to remember when those languages were viewed as like fairly new, but also kind of stuffy and boring. And a lot of the younger people didn't want to study them because they're like, well, I don't want to go into business stuff or like COBOL, and they wanted to study other things that were a bit flashier, you could say. And it's a significant issue when you just let the market decide, and a lot of the people in the market are young people making perhaps imprudent decisions. Well, then you get the situation that we're in as they get older.
There's there's a concept of basement code.
What's that?
Basement code is the code that's like in the basement. You just don't go down there. It works. It gives you a specific output. You're not supposed to touch it. And so you kind of like, because people, eventually retire, there's certain institutional knowledge that's lost. If there's not good documentation, even if there is good documentation, sometimes there's stuff that even when you try to refactor it, which is rewriting the code to make it more clean or function a little bit better or produce potentially new outputs for a regular output, that you touch it and you like it shouldn't be anything different than what you did, and it throws all sorts of errors and everyone's just like
no way
roll
of
it back.
Figuring out what it is.
and just roll it back. It's like, because okay, we can just build on top of that. That is now foundation. We don't touch it. And it'd be interesting, as you're talking about, with maintaining these databases, if AI would be able to help programmers deal with that better, because right now this is a big issue for certain institutions.
Yeah, quite true. So let's talk about AI. I think the way a lot of people view it is intruding or being exploited for commercial or professional writing work. There's very, sky is falling prognostication out there where people are like, we're not going to need any writers. We can just do all of this with AIs. And, what we see happening is people are trying to do this, and it's not working out great at this time. So Sports Illustrated recently got caught in a scandal that I think probably a lot of people heard about. They got rid of their staff writers and they replaced them with AIs, and then they created fake profiles. And this is how they got caught. Actually, two things. So the AIs put out content that didn't really sound entirely on point, and so I think some people's antenna went up, and then they were like, well, I've never heard of this writer. So then they started trying to track them down, and they found that like the images were stock images, things like that. And they created a bunch of articles, and then they got journalists started looking into this. And the Futurism article on it said the AI author's writing often sounds like it was written by an alien. And if you're doing sports writing, a lot of colloquialisms in there. I think that's one of the areas where there's going to be a lot of like background knowledge that somehow you would have to have. And I don't know that an LLM at this point in time can adequately mimic that. And so when they reached out to Sports Illustrated, now they're not their own independent thing. They're owned by a company, the Arena Group, and then they blamed it on subcontractors in a statement that said that they licensed content from an external third-party company, Advon Commerce. They're just kind of covering their rears there and shifting responsibility. But they scrubbed everything. And so, there's no better admission that you did the wrong thing than when you take it all down. Of course, there's the Wayback Machine, and so they weren't able to get it all entirely offline. But it relying on AI to replace human beings turned out to be a bad move in that case. And so we could talk about imprudent company use of it. But there's, the Clarkesworld thing actually strikes me as being kind of analogous to the stuff that you're talking about with hackers. Clarkesworld is a literary magazine of science fiction and fantasy that's online, and they got completely overwhelmed by AI-generated content submissions, which is happening in other places too. So they actually had to close their submissions because as they said, it's easy with these tools to churn out hundreds of thousands of works in the time a human author would produce maybe one or two, but none of it's very good. And so you're generating lots and lots of content, which is not what a literary magazine would want to have. And so Clark said, what we basically have is a room of screaming toddlers, and we can't hear the people we're trying to listen to. And it strikes me that this sort of thing could happen in many other venues with people just throwing out AI content. On LinkedIn, you automatically have, if you start writing a post, it asks you, do you want to improve this with AI? Mm-hmm. And I'm willing to bet plenty of the people on LinkedIn are taking advantage of that, or they're just churning out articles with SEO terms and using AI to write them. Go ahead.
There's just this sea change in the internet at this point in time. Like anything before 2022, and post 2022, that's going to be, because so much of our internet is text based. We don't know. But there's the old meme no one on the internet knows you're a dog. It's like a picture of a dog at a keyboard. So the same thing with an AI. No one on the internet knows you're an AI. Technically, because of this level of obfuscation. And so there's going to, already you're seeing this shoveling of a whole bunch of AI output. And there's even a subreddit on Reddit that has only ever been bots.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you write something by hand.
How long has it been around?
Oh, years.
Okay.
And so the bots have been bad. And so that's kind of the funny thing about it is the bots were putting out this kind of garbage text. But I feel like the internet is moving more and more towards that everywhere, unless there are some things to try to figure out who's a human or not.
Yeah. So another one of the signs of this that we were going to talk about is on Amazon, there's been a proliferation of essentially fake ebooks where you could actually say that plagiarism is taking place. Mm-hmm. Somebody will take an author's books that are available on Amazon. They'll get it in Kindle version, right? Mm-hmm. And now you've actually got the whole text, input it into an AI generator, put some prompts in there, summarize this chapter, and then they will put out a book and they will claim that this is somehow connected to the original human author. But of course, they're not. And the human authors are finding this out, right? They're doing Google searches on themselves, and then they're finding all this stuff that's using their name and essentially their, I guess, what would you call it? Their expertise, their profession, their clout. But it's being used to sell crappy, cobbled together ebooks that I don't know who's buying this stuff, but apparently it is quite profitable. And, one of the big worries that I saw expressed recently, and you probably, have thought much more about this. So when AIs in large language models are scrubbing the internet for information, mm-hmm. nowadays, some of the stuff that they're going to be taking in is AI-generated content. Mm-hmm. And you get a kind of degradation of the quality of what they're getting. So how does that work? It's what we call garbage in, garbage out. Okay.
And so the quality of the output is directly related to the quality of the input. Although the issue, one of the main projects and things that a data scientist has to do when they're making the data for these is to actually scrub it and pull out the stuff that is bad data. That's incredibly human intensive. A lot of this is incredibly manual, and there's Mechanical Turk as an example of a process that's through Google, and then there's whole companies that their entire project is to create good usable data for companies like this. And so Appen is a company that does a lot of this, and then there's a whole bunch of others out there.
I mean, that's interesting because one of the big worries is AI is going to steal all our jobs. You're saying there's some jobs you can't do without human beings that are actually created by using AIs.
Yeah. The question is, does the content of the AI output eventually get good enough that you can actually build new AI out of that output? At the current moment, I would say no.
Yeah.
But that's why, Reddit's doing an IPO recently, and they're basically saying that they're selling all of their data to either Google or Microsoft.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
That's going to be really useful data because that is a giant database of conversations about a whole heck of a lot of things. As long as you keep only the stuff before 2002, the data that you're going to get is going to be very good. Yeah,
and Redditors, this is be a bit of a generalization, of course, but Redditors in their subreddits are really into the things that they're talking about. Many of them have done a lot of research and have, well thought out arguments and opinions. And of course you also have trolls and, goofballs and stuff like that. But it seems like going to places like that is probably going to get you better data sets than just sampling a bunch of undergraduate papers or something on a topic, right?
Right. Absolutely. And so, kind of getting back here, another place that this is the whole what was that, boom or bust? How do you call it? The AI evangelists versus the AI doomers.
Oh, the hypes, yeah. The hypes, too positive, too negative, yeah.
And one of these is Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, the world's largest provider of compute for AI in the world. Like their stuff is the gold standard. And he's saying, he put he was at a conference in Davos, which is I think in Switzerland or whatnot.
It is, yeah.
A whole bunch of CEOs and heads of state come together to rub shoulders and talk about stuff. And he had a talk where he says that AI will making coding obsolete, and he told the leaders to stop teaching kids to code, because in his pie in the sky idea is that we're going to be just doing prompts for coding. Have you ever watched Star Trek, and they're in the what is it?
The holodeck?
Holodeck, and they're okay, give me a chair.
Yeah,
okay, now I want this to do this, and so it's all just prompts in natural language to get the computer to do a thing.
Yeah,
that's his idea of what we're at, and I'm not sure that is going to be totally true, but there's definitely going to be a reduction of kind of busy work coding.
Okay,
but the process of being a problem solver, which is the biggest thing in coding, that's the biggest mental thing, is still going to be an absolutely useful skill going forward.
So here's an interesting paradox that would apply just as much to coding as it would to professional writing as it would to academic writing. I think you're right that problem solving is going to become a more highly demanded skill. Not just in terms of economics where you can get, if you can show that you can do problem solving, you're going to make more money. But also, if we don't want things to completely break down, you're going to need human problem solvers to untangle the things where the AIs kind of mess things up. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we train problem solvers? So it's going to be kind of a balance, right? Because they have to be doing enough work with AI, and not just work where they're overseeing AI, but actually tinkering around with it and playing around with it, where they develop a knack for being able to say, aha, we have a real problem here. And this is a tricky one, not something that's routine that we can easily push away. And there would be a temptation on the part of students who are, say, less motivated or, let's say extrinsically motivated. They don't find that task interesting just by themselves. And they're like, yeah, this is a prestigious way to get my diploma and then get out there, they would be very tempted to cheat by using AI. So there's a kind of interesting paradox there. What we ideally want are people who are motivated to be problem solvers because they think that's great. What we know is there aren't a lot of those people at any given point in time. Right? So how do we foster this within a climate in which AI is becoming not only more and more a factor, but more and more available to them to allow them to make things easy on themselves, And I think this does apply just as much to the coding world as it does to professional writing, as it does to students in traditional, colleges and universities and academia.
I feel like there's something along the lines of just the joy of finding things out.
Yeah, exactly.
To foster curiosity in a way that people find that enjoyable just to figure things out. And that hopefully leads to basically these problem solvers. Because if you got... Asking the why question, I guess, is what it comes down to in my mind. Is okay. Yes, you got the answer, but why? Fostering that love of the why,
as opposed to just sort of bottom line thinking, I want to get the task done and just don't bother me with all this other extraneous stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting problem, and I certainly don't have a solution to. But so we had some interesting answers. I put out a question in social media. What's your biggest concern with the uses of AI to produce text? Do you think we should tackle a few of those?
Sure.
Okay. So which ones did you find particularly compelling or interesting or problematic?
Oh, maybe this one by Kaz.
Okay.
So I'm worried about this lack of diversity of ideas that may occur as AI-generated text becomes more prevalent. As I understand it, AI splices together existing ideas rather than creating entirely new ones. As a pot of original ideas is exhausted and the pot of AI created, spliced together ideas, expands, AI will have less and less original ideas to draw from until it is just splicing together already spliced ideas. I fear that it will create a soup of non-originality and repetitive themes that slow our cultural and artistic development.
What do you think? I mean, I'm not convinced about that, in part, I think, because I'm rather cynical and think that at any given time, most of the ideas we have are just kind of, recycled, regurgitated ideas anyway.
Yeah. Having original ideas, truly original ideas, those don't come around very often. There's this whole idea within art that most art is you take it and you either modify it, you smash two things together, or you expand, add, or remix.
Okay.
And so it's this just a modification of previous ideas. Yeah, every once in a while you're going to get theory of relativity or whatnot. But I guess this also assumes that no one's going to be inclined to mess around with new ideas ever, and I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm also I'm not super worried about that for the exact same reason that you said, that this is kind of how most people deal with things or make new things already.
There is a issue with lack of diversity in ideas that isn't being framed by that one, but I think could be a worry. And this is where we get concerns about AIs replicating or reproducing biases that are already there in the information, right? So if let's say you use, and you wouldn't do this, but a whole bunch of translations from the Oxford, Cambridge guys from the 19th century. One thing that they often would do is use mankind in place of humanity or stuff like that, when actually the stuff they're translating, the Greek or Latin text, would be non-gendered. And you could say, language contained all this sort of these biases. Now, if you're training an LLM on it, it's not the LLM's fault that, like you said, garbage in, garbage out, right? Or biased information in, biased information out. And we do see this with like AI art generators in terms of like race. Sometimes you ask it to do this sort of thing and there's not enough images in the background, and it'll give you something that you didn't ask for. But I mean, it strikes me that if we really feel that's a problem, then maybe we can give AIs more of this stuff that we would like to have incorporated. It doesn't predict that it will show up more, but we could at least make an effort, I suppose.
And to a certain extent, like, art is interesting because of the novelty, and so there's always going to be your monkeys that are going to pretend to be the Beatles or whatnot. You're going to have those copycats. You're going to have those people that latch onto a style, and then there's going to be people that are out there doing their own thing, and they'll come up with something new. And I don't see these changing that desire for originality from artists in that regard.
On the part of humans, but do you think this is a totally off the wall question, do you think that we'll ever see AIs tweaked to try to make them more original?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's got to be the thing. I guess if it gets too homogenous or it gets too overused, just think about superhero films.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They were everywhere, and then now they're kind of dying. Or go back a generation. Westerns were this thing that were
right
everywhere,
yeah.
And they've been almost entirely died off. And that things get played out, and there has to be something new. And it's not, unless we're unallowed as humans to make art anymore, that's not going to change.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one, which is kind of along similar lines. It's from Manders12. I would be worried with an over-reliance on AI text generators. We gradually lose our enthusiasm to voice any opinions or risk sharing something creative we've written due to hyper-awareness of how advanced AIs can seemingly say it better. Thus, we allow ourselves to become boring and trite. And this isn't something I would envision as a possibility for myself, because I know I can, at least in the areas that I work, I can write better stuff than AIs can, certainly at this point in time. But I could see how younger people who are like, well, these things are going to be around the rest of my life, and I'm not that great of a writer yet or a researcher. They're going to get a lap on me. They're going to move ahead, and then what's the point in me doing my stuff? And artists could worry about this, and musicians could worry about this, copywriters could worry about this, I suppose coders could worry about it as well. I don't know, what do you think about that concern, that human beings are going to be, let's say, whatever they produce is going to be mediocre in comparison to what the AIs would generate?
So this kind of reminds me of, there was an issue with there's a forum, an art forum, and people were accusing an individual of using AI art, even though the artist was not using it. He was able to prove this by going through and showing the entire process of their stuff in Photoshop, and they're taking screenshots of every layer and how they actually created each individual portion of this image that eventually they posted. And so I'm kind of worried about kind of a tangential thing of how can you write in a way that people think that you're not an AI.
Yeah, and right now it's pretty easy to do, because the AIs do sound kind of homogenous, and they talk in a way that's kind of academic-y, although you can, depends on what you're prompting it, right?
Right. But this is once you say you want to ape in style, and so feed it all of Isaac Asimov's writing, and then say hey, write me a short story in the way that Isaac Asimov would. And so I think of image generators 2 years ago, and they were blobby. Like, give me an elephant. And it's like this image that kind of sort of looked like an elephant.
Yeah.
And here we are 2 years later, and you can have like a herd of elephants all like balancing on balls while shooting rockets out of their trunks. Like, it's the amount of progression that we've seen in a very short amount of time makes me think that this step is going to be small. Not that it's going to be amazing, like to the point where we're anywhere near our thing, but like the speed at which these things are going to advance are going to be potentially very disturbing to some people.
Yeah, and do you think, because I gather that you're more optimistic about the capacities for development than I am. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's going to be any areas of writing where AIs just are never going to be as good as human beings? And let me throw one idea out there. People have been caught using AIs to write like love letters to their significant other, like Valentine's cards and stuff like that. And, okay, if you're not very good at that sort of thing, I guess that might actually work better than getting a Hallmark card, right? Mm-hmm. Which is somebody else's writing something. Do you think there's any areas where the AIs just aren't going to be better than a decent level, and we're not talking about like expert level, but decent level human being writing?
Maybe a novel?
Oh, why that?
Because a novel is like a whole bunch of interconnected stories that have to have, well, at least a good one is going to have foreshadowing and callbacks, and there has to be a theme that is consistent. That you have to have these characters that have to remain consistent to their character over a long period of time. There's a lot of things that you have to keep, and you have to have it be interesting. Like, all of those things, that's a lot of things to go together in a well-structured manner.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know where the limit is. But that is a very hard task.
That's true. And I think that actually is a good one. And I wonder if we could say, like, I remember going to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee because my, at that time, kid was interested in musical theater, and they showed us the library, and they have these scores of, symphony things. And this is what the conductor is looking at when they're waving their hands around and doing all the stuff. And I was thinking, holy crap, how do you keep all that in your head? And somehow some people can do that, and they can write that sort of stuff. And they're like, and then the drums do this, and the trombones do this, And okay, so now we can feed all sorts of cool stuff in, and you could do pop songs probably easy with AIs. But could an AI actually generate like a good symphonic work that's 20 minutes long and has movements and stuff like that? Maybe that's like doing a novel,
Could be. That is a very advanced task. But as I said at the very beginning of this radio show, is that these neural networks are universal function approximators. They will approximate a function. And the more good information you give them, the better their outputs will be.
So we could potentially see AI architects or things that we often associate with high level of human activity. I think we're pretty much out of time. Do you want to lead us out on a final thought?
Yeah, we're going to leave you today with the words of Dan Simmons. My treatment of the human-AI coevolution in the Hyperion books is an allegory of humankind's relationship to its current AIs, mainly because we ain't got any.